My DIY wind tunnel has one massive, glaring problem. You can't see the smoke. And that makes the whole thing kind of pointless, don't you agree? And so today, I'm going to attempt to fix it. And I'm going to show you, the viewer, why something as simple as paint completely changes everything. You see, NASA uses wind tunnels to test the aerodynamics of really important things, like cars and airplanes, like important cars and important airplanes. I want to test those things, yes, but I also want to test super random things that NASA just frankly doesn't have time to test. So if you have an idea of a super random object that I should put in this wind tunnel, like a brick or a water bottle, man, drop it in the comments below because I want to see what you think, and maybe one day we'll put that thing in the wind tunnel. But here's my problem. Right now, you can't see the smoke. And it's basically the point of the whole thing is seeing the smoke inside the wind tunnel of whatever we put in it. And until I solve this, all these crazy tests that I want to do, all the things that I have planned for the wind tunnel, they're basically pointless. So today's video is about fixing that. It sounds simple, but it is one of the most important changes I'll ever make to this wind tunnel. To clarify a little further, the backdrop of my wind tunnel is too light, and the smoke is grayish white, so it just kind of blends in together. And I've tried using flashlights to help this stand out, and it helps a little bit, but it still looks weak. What I really need is contrast. The opposite of grayish white, black. So, some ideas seem obvious. Paint the backdrop black. But then, the flood of questions hit me. Questions like, do I really just paint it? Or is there a smarter option? Would gluing black paper on the back work? Sounds dumb, but maybe. What about objects that I put inside? Will it clash with the color of the backdrop if I choose not to do black? And what kind of paint should I buy? In fact, how much paint should I buy? And these questions, I'm not gonna lie, they haunted me. But I had to figure out like what kind of paint I was gonna use. And to be honest, I wouldn't think about it, but there is a ton of types of different paint. And therefore, a lot of questions about paint that I never considered before. Do I use indoor paint? Do I use outdoor paint? Do I even use black paint at all? Would a different color work better than another color? And then that question led me to, well, what if it clashes with the object inside? So I come back to the black paint, and then I have another question of, do I use super flat paint, which will absorb a lot of the reflection, or super glossy, ultra glossy paint, which will reflect more like a mirror? And my thought behind that is, yeah, I want to have some of the light kind of bounce off in the wind tunnel to help us see the smoke, but at what point is it too much? And how much paint would be enough to paint the inside of this wind tunnel? I mean, a gallon is definitely way too much. Needless to say, a 5-gallon bucket. But where do I find, I don't know, like a cup of black paint? But the other thing I had to consider is how much I was going to spend on this paint. Now, already, I had spent a lot on this wind tunnel for this month, and I couldn't really spend more than $15. So already, that knocks out the super cool blackest paint in the world, Black 3.0, that I've seen on YouTube, just because it's too expensive. Now, later, if we think that's cool, I may try it. If you want me to try it, let me know in the comments below, and maybe one day we'll get there. I could have thought about this choice of paint for months and years, and this video may have never gotten done. But the other day, I was at Home Depot, and I just thought, man, I'll look around and see if I can find any small cans of black paint. And so I looked around and walked down 3 of the different paint aisles. Nothing. Not a single gallon of paint. Well, there was paint, but not a single gallon of black paint. So I just kind of am like, well, I guess I'm going to have to order something or go to a craft store, which has enough other questions of its own. And then I saw a kiosk with little tiny samples of paint. This is the spot in the store where you can get just tiny little samples so you can go home, put a color on your wall, and see if you want to come back later and buy an actual gallon. But I thought, I wonder if he can just give me a little sample of the blackest paint that he has. That would definitely be enough for what I need it for. So I walk over there and I don't see anyone. So then I wait for one of the Home Depot employees to come over, and I ask him for the flattest and blackest paint that he has. And I was thinking it was kind of a funny saying, but he didn't laugh. And because he didn't laugh, I felt the need to over-explain myself a little bit. And so I said, "Hey man, like I just need just a little bit. Like this is," and I used my hands to explain how little paint I needed, and he didn't care. He just put the blackest paint that he could in that little tiny sample container, gave it to me, and he was on to the next person. And I felt embarrassed. So I go home and start prepping the area for painting, which always takes longer than I think it's going to. There's so much stuff you have to clean up when you're about to paint. And then I start painting it on, and it looks blue. Like there is a huge hint of blue, and suddenly I'm stressed out again. I'm like, have I just wasted my time? Have I just wasted this $6? What happens? What am I gonna do now? And then I remembered, oh yeah, I can just go back and paint it later. And so I just kept painting. I was like, well, it's too late now. Once it dried, it actually looked really good. All it needed was a second coat, and I'll spare you from putting on a second coat because, ironically, let's be real, that would probably be one of the most boring things you've ever seen on YouTube. So I'm not going to include it. And once the backdrop was dry, I put the laminar flow device back in. And while laminar flow device sounds like something NASA made, it's literally just chopped up PVC pipes. And it does the job. It straightens out the airflow. It doesn't do it perfectly, but it works for right now. And that's actually something that I'm going to improve here in the near future. So subscribe if you want to see how that works, and maybe if you want to make a wind tunnel of your own, how you could start that process for yourself. But the question still remains, is this new backdrop actually going to work? I mean, I think it's going to work, but is it actually going to improve the contrast so we can see the smoke better? Well, there's only one way to find out. So I finally get to fire up the wind tunnel. I feed the smoke, and this time it pops. The smoke finally stands out crystal clear against the background, and I feel like for the first time I can see the airflow that I've been chasing since I built this thing. But this upgrade isn't just about paint. This is about making the wind tunnel usable. It's about making it better. And without contrast, the airflow was pretty much invisible. And with it, I can finally start doing some of the things that I've dreamed of when I wanted to make this wind tunnel channel a thing. Putting random, fun, sometimes ridiculous objects in the wind tunnel just to see what happens. So, if you want to see golf balls, frisbees, and even weirder stuff tested in this tunnel, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it. And if you have an idea, drop it in the comments and I might actually put it in there. And if you do, I would love to know what it is, why, and what you think is going to happen. And this paint fix, it's just step one. But for now, this little paint upgrade may not look like much, but it changes everything. And now, the real fun begins.